2015 meeting of the Granada Sanitary District Board of Directors is called to order. Roll call, please.
President Matthew Clark is the Vice President Leonard Warren.
Present.
Secretary Jim Leonard.
Here.
Treasurer David Seaton.
Here.
Director Rick Bowman.
Here.
And then at the table we have General Manager Chuck Duffy and Legal Counsel Johnson Yipper. I'm the Administrator David Seaton.
Thank you. Let's repeat the report out of closed session.
No reportable action was taken.
Before we get started on the regular agenda, I called the new Sam Government Manager. Called the new Sam Government Manager this afternoon and asked if he would like to come introduce himself. And Jim Harvey had called him earlier this week, so he's at Montera's board meeting right now, and he might show up here at like 8 o'clock or something, so we'll maybe deviate from the agenda a little bit when he shows up.
Okay.
So with that, over to Chuck for consideration of sewer authority Midcoast general operation budget. Item 1.
Do you want to?
Did you call for public?
Yeah, public
All right.
comment.
Yeah, quickly.
Well, I've done this in a while. Okay, here we are. General public participation. I don't see any speaker slips, but I see somebody in the audience who's here for general public participation. Lenny.
Yes. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name's Lenny Schultz, and I am the co-chair of Granada Parks Committee for the advocacy of the passage of Measure G, which will convert the Granada Sanitary District to a CSD with the ability to provide parks and rec facilities. The passage of Measure G, I believe, will reflect the values of our community, and landscapes do reflect the values of our communities. The question here with Measure G, and I want to thank you so much, Granada Sanitary District staff and directors, for bringing this forward to the community. It's only taken 14 years to get it on the ballot. So let's have the baby. The question is, do we want a happier, healthier community? Do we want safe places to play? Do we want increased property values and increased economic benefit? Do we want to save our special places for the many? Do we want a greater sense of community? I do. All these things come about for communities who have parks and rec. It's well documented that communities that have park and rec are healthier and happier. The benefits far outweigh the cost. Let's not leave ourselves behind. I am here to just urge all the voters in the district to vote yes on Measure G. We don't want to leave ourselves behind. Communities all over the nation are saving their special places and creating parks for themselves. We know we're growing, and we need to do this. We need to create safe places to play, ballparks, whatever we want, community gardens. It will be open to us. We've waited for decades. I've lived here 25 years, and we've had to fight tooth and nail for everything that we do have, and I see the community really enjoying the lands that we have saved. But those are our county parks. We have two. We have the state beach and we have the county park, Quarry Park. So now we're talking about local parks here. And I just want you to imagine Princeton, Miramar, and El Granada with small parks of whatever your choice might be. We can go to the GSD and that has become the CSD. And we can ask them, would you consider this kind of a park, a community garden or something of that nature? We need peaceful places to gather. We need a greater sense of community. I think we lack that here in our communities. Passing Measure G will also carry the legacy of Daniel Burnham, who designed this town. We have the bones of a beautiful community with the park chains, but we can't really use any of this. It's just shabby, and we need to fix these up and have these places to play. Daniel Burnham would be smiling on us right now. He's the father of City Beautiful, the designer of our town. So in addition to all the above benefits that I mentioned of Parks and Rec, I'd like to ask someone on the board what the advantage would be for the community in terms of taxes, saving taxes or keeping our taxes, property taxes within the community. Could someone answer that question? Because I think it's a really important advantage of voting yes on Measure G, that we would have an advantage here of keeping some property taxes within the community. Could you explain that, someone?
I think the short answer is what I've been saying for a long time, that the state roughly every 2 years, since Prop 13, tries to steal the property tax from enterprise districts, an enterprise district being one that provides an identifiable service and can charge a fee for that service. And sooner or later they'll succeed because they're committed to it, and once they do, we won't have that property tax to prop up the sewer service charge. We'll have to raise the sewer service charge potentially suddenly by the full amount. But anything that we shift now over to Parks and Rec, they're much more unlikely to steal that money because the non-enterprise functions don't typically have any other funding source. So in either scenario, we end up raising the sewer service charges, but in one scenario, we get something for it, which is local parks, and in another scenario, we don't get anything for it.
Yes.
Hopefully that was a short enough answer. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's an answer that is promising. I mean, it's a positive for the community. I don't see any reason why the community would vote no, actually. We have a lot of really smart people in our community. And I would say that, you know, the smart choice is voting yes on Measure G. Thank you very much. Thank you for providing the opportunity.
Thanks for doing all the work on the independent committee.
Thank you for allowing me to.
The board has no control over the independent committee. Okay, any other comments or items not on the agenda? And we will move to regular agenda item 1, consideration of sewer authority coast side general operation budget for fiscal year 2014-15.
All right, in front of your board is the general operating budget from SAM, which ourselves and the other 2 member agencies of SAM, City of Half Moon Bay and Montana Water and Sanitary District, are required to approve each year. So, you know, I've been going through these budgets for a number of years, and they're big, they're complicated, they're unwieldy, and at the end of the day, possibly more important than the budget is what they do in the operating year, what they spend their money on, because if we give them too much money, if I think this budget is high or low, either way, if it's high, we'll get our money back at the end of the year, but depending on what they spend, and if it's low, we'll have to kick in more money if they didn't collect enough. So I guess the only couple big items in this budget that I would point out that's a little bit confusing, and maybe Leonard or Rick could jump in and tell me why that is if you look at the treatment budget,
How many cases in this unnumbered?
they don't have it numbered. I don't know, a lot. It's the big pull-out sheet.
But I think there's multiple.
The purple.
It's a big pull-out sheet that's labeled general budget treatment.
First
The
one.
treatment in the upper right-hand corner there.
First one.
The first pull-out says general operating admin treatment and NDWSCP.
Yeah, that's not it. You've got to keep going.
The next one says general operating admin treatment and NDWSCP. The next one says admin. I have no idea.
Keep going.
So on one side it says treatment, on the other side
Right.
general treatment.
So the last page of the spreadsheet that says treatment, they've got 2 line items there.
This one.
The first one is for pump station, it's right in the middle of that spreadsheet.
I don't know
Yes.
what you said right in the middle.
Yeah.
It's overhead.
What's the account?
5182004.
Right.
Got it.
So they've budgeted for that number, the $195,000 for pump station, $298 for plant equipment. And that seems high over prior years. And then when you turn to the justification page, which is also unnumbered, which is another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages behind it. Have they identified any of these repairs they list here? The IPS repairs, assess wet well, replace well? Does the IPS have any associated projects with it that you know of for that $112,000?
On the spot, I'm not sure I can come up with them. I'm unclear on whether all of the pressure relief vacuum valves have been replaced or not yet. I don't think we're finished with the bypass station project.
Well, and that's what I was looking for, because that buy station project I thought was prioritized
But
somewhere.
The IPS, we're in the process of finding out it's in much worse condition than we thought it is. And there's a segment up in Montera, Rick, do you remember exactly where? I think between Bellamore and Montera pump stations. Not sure I remember exactly which segment, but there's a substantial segment there that's probably gonna have to be replaced, similar to what we had to do coming out of Portola going down to Coronado here.
Yeah, and
So that's a big ticket item.
and they talked to that in this capital maintenance budget, which is item 3 on this agenda. Is there a differentiation
Oh, okay.
between,
I may have the two things crossed then. I'm not clear what the detail on the IPS repairs is, but there's probably a lot of spot things, I think. I'm kind of annoyed that there is no detail of that in here.
well, as best I remember, that 112 is the carryover number from last year. I remember arguing about it last year because it didn't have anything tied to it, and I'm not sure what the differentiation is between an IPS repair on this treatment budget and that capital maintenance program, or whatever they
This
call
does
it.
say as needed, so it might not be too far out of line to assume from that that refers to, spring leak somewhere and we have to run out and fix it.
Whereas the capital maintenance projects are identified.
Right.
All right. Okay, so,
Because, that emergency fix for the leak at Coronado, how long ago was that by now? More than a year, I think.
yeah,
That turned out to be pretty expensive.
yeah. Well, they generally are force main projects. You got to bypass it and highline it and all that kind of stuff, so.
There was night mobilization, and they had to get Vector truck rental out of here, and Dreeny a couple times.
Right. So I'm going to actually meet with the SAM general manager tomorrow and the other member agency managers, and I can talk about this. Part of the problem with this budget is it's right in between. It was developed by the interim general manager. The new GM came along and it was presented to him as a fait accompli, so he won't know much about it either.
When the SAM board, at the last regular meeting, voted to approve this for distribution to the member agencies for consideration, we were told that none of the agency managers submitted any comments on this.
That's correct, yeah. Because I'm done commenting. Again, what matters is, if they collect $3.1 million and they only spend $3 million, then theoretically we got $100,000 back, so.
Yeah, after 3 months of arguing each year.
Right, so each year I say your pump station budget is $100,000 higher than it was the previous 2 years. Why is that? And, I can't affect change that way, so.
Now, I should point out that at the recent SAM board meetings, what we agreed to do is the $320,000, instead of that being refunded this year, we're going to start at the top of the list of projects that need money and just knock those off until we've gotten to the 320. So it's not going to be refunded this year.
Right, and I put that in my budget extra, so. So, based on that, you know, moving forward, I'm not looking for board approval tonight of this budget, because in past years, we've approved it, and then Half Moon Bay has approved a different budget, and Montera's approved a different budget. So what I would recommend is we've looked at this, if anyone's got any questions or comments, fire away, and then we'll see what the other two agencies do, and that way we can have a coherent budget passage.
One of the things that we're gonna need to think about somewhere, and maybe this is not the appropriate agenda item for it, but the percentages are starting to look strange again.
Yeah,
And that is really driving up our costs. And come to think of it, one of the things that I would ask for is to authorize our general counsel to go through the JPA agreement and potentially any resolutions. I'll have to, someone will have to look through the list of SAM resolutions to see which ones might be relevant. And they're basing the admin cost on flow percentages. Counting is silly. The admin percentages should be on client ownership. And the JPA agreement is essentially silent on that other than the first year, which was what, 1976 or something. And beyond that is silent on how you allocate the admin.
well, I'd argue that the admin's an operating expense. They're all, every expense that's not a capitalized expense is an operating expense. So, and I also noticed in the minutes.
How are admin costs influenced by the amount of flow from any member agency?
No, I'm agreeing with you.
And you
Oh,
said
not
it's
agreeing with
operating
you, so-
expense.
right, going the other way. They're all operating expenses, but
Well, that's their argument.
I saw in the SAM minutes that the SAM board had discussed basing cost allocation on the fixed percentages.
Yeah, I went down in plans.
The minutes say it's.
I've been yelling about that for months now.
Yeah, but the minutes say it's, you're gonna consider it.
Well, you want to have Rick report on that when we get to
Okay.
item 6?
Because I could make a, I don't know, pretty compelling argument that it should be, because I've done the calculation, something like 90% of the costs at SAM are fixed. When you get down to it, irrespective of flow, all those people are there. So you start getting pumping costs get affected and things like that. It's a
All right,
little bit-
let's discuss that in more detail under item 6.
Okay.
So, have you gone over this budget in detail?
Yes.
Do you have any things that you think may be problematic that you want to point out to this board now?
I don't think anything's gonna be problematic. It's like I said, the SAM budget, you know, what you pay for electricity is what you pay for
Okay,
electricity.
Let me rephrase and substitute on, instead of problematic, do you have any issues with any of the items here?
Well, it's a broader issue of, do we think staffing levels are correct there? You know, you've been talking about the temporary administrative assistant who's been there for
The non-temp, no.
7 years or something like
Well,
that. So it's not.
It's a different one every year.
Right, but it's so, you know, I'm not gonna, I don't work at SAM, I'm not gonna comment on their staffing levels or whatnot.
For those who
This
haven't-
budget is driven by their staffing levels, and their staffing levels are what their staffing levels are, so.
For those who haven't heard this before, I asked Chuck a while back how many employees he has for the 4 treatment plants he runs in Southern California. And the answer was 6 employees for all 4 treatment plants together. And we have head count accounting management of 14, although that includes collection system guys. And-
Well, which brings us to the next budget, if you want to move on, because I have more comments.
So do any directors have anything they'd like to?
Any
So
questions?
we're gonna just hold off on approving them?
Yeah, and we'll see.
Until next meeting?
Yeah,
Well, as long as nobody has any substantial issues that we might want to take back to the SAM board and say, we don't like this doesn't seem right.
I mean, what happened with plant and equipment this year? How come they were, looks like they're way, already, you know, we're not even halfway through the year.
they were.
Well, we had the emergency problem with electrical on, the main breaker was a problem, and that's a real expensive item. and I don't remember all the other things that were wrapped around that axle, but,
So deferred maintenance type things, just kind of.
Well, if you look at the, and this is kind of what I've been railing about in past years, if you look at the pump station line, item, that one's easier. The pump station actual was $54,000 in fiscal year 11-12. The actual was $159,000 the next year. $100,000 of that, though, was that repair Leonard's talking about at Coronado. So that's a kind of an artificial thing. That's what you have your reserves for, that $1.25 million. They budgeted 195, and again this year they've only spent 60. And they say they're going to spend 118 by the end of the year. I don't know how they're going to do that, and it's kind of similar to the line item below. They've spent $271,000 year to date, and they say they're going to spend 542. Well, I don't know how they're going to spend $270,000 in the next literally month and a half. So, do I agree with those numbers? No, but it's not my budget. And, you know, once again, if they don't spend that, we theoretically get it back, or we apply it as a credit to future projects or whatnot. So,
well, the overarching issue that I have here is the flow thing, because, and I don't think these tables are included in what we have here, but if you look at year over year, Half Moon Bay, I guess it is here, so it's actually on the second sheet of the budget, the first page after the title page. If you look at the, on the right page.
and before you get it, let me give Jim and David some historical perspective. So for 10 years, from 2002 to 2012, and I'm making up the years, flow is pretty much 50% Half Moon Bay, 30% Granada, 20% Montero. Then all of a sudden, our flows started creeping up, and before long they were galloping up. So we went from 30% of the total flow to 38 to 40% of the total flow. Now the way the flow is calculated, any gain we have is taken off of Half Moon Bay. So at one point in time, we had a 40-40-20 split, and I had a year and a half, 2-year running argument with the SAM GM saying, that just can't be. We can't. And then sure enough, when we did some flow meter rejiggering and whatnot, we went back to this 50-30-20. Now it's a substantial difference when you start looking at the budget. 1% of the budget's $30,000. So if you've got to pay 3 or 4 or 5% more, it's some real money in relation to our budget. So just recently,
Yeah,
after
over a couple of years, what I consider the incorrect readings cost this agency $150,000.
right, which isn't inconsequential. So they've recently started creeping up, and we don't have a real good reason why. You know what, I was thinking about this the other day. Remember my worry about the wet weather flow management project that would become a general drain for the groundwater in the Burnham Strip.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that a couple of days ago.
So when I talk to the general manager tomorrow, I'm going to ask him to go pull those lids and see what's in there and what's closed off and whatnot. But it's something to look at anyway. So the point Leonard's bringing up is that our flows have been increasing, and the SAM budget, remember, is 70% of our budget. So the
Yeah.
costs over there.
Not real money.
Right. That's right. Exactly. So.
Okay, so do any directors want to discuss any other items in this budget?
Well, you were gonna point something else out, you said?
I think I was.
Well, I was just
the
gonna-
plant equipment thing, like I said.
What I was going to show, I'm not sure we have that page in here. Do they show the year-to-year increase by agency? That page doesn't seem to be included here.
They didn't present
Flow
it to.
distribution?
Um,
They don't have percentage of flow year over year compared.
Well, okay, this is good enough. The very last page of this budget is
Right.
what Dave was just pointing at. Just look at the top of it. JPA/O&M flow calculation using 1-year average. You see Half Moon Bay goes from 50% to 48.9, GSD goes from 28.7 to 31.3, a jump of what, 2.5%. And MWSD goes down from 21.3 to 19.8. So then you look at the bottom line, the difference is Half Moon Bay is minus 2.2%, GSD is plus 9.2%, and MWSD is minus 7.2. So effectively, the other member agencies' costs are going down, and ours are going up by 9%. And that just can't be right. There is no possible reality where that's correct.
I agree.
Unless we
Preaching to
have
the
a
choir.
major leak somewhere that's letting stuff in.
Right, like the wet weather flow management project, so.
Could be. You should ask that they do handheld video of what they find when they pull the manholes.
Yeah, I will.
All right, should we move on to the next budget?
Okay, the collections budget. I don't know where to start with this one. If you go,
You are aware that the SAM board was convinced that we need to increase the collection system field crew to two-man crews. So that was a significant increase in the budget.
well, and then maybe that explains that. I don't think we need two-man crews. I have the exact same system down south, and we clean it with one guy and one two-man crew. We've been discussing that issue amongst the managers for literally a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So,
Well, we can certainly revisit that, but Rick helped me out here, I kind of thought that we were told that the member agency managers were on board with this. Didn't they?
That's always what they kind of allude to. That doesn't have to be reality. It's just what they're saying.
yeah, it's far from
So
reality.
now
I mean,
we get the real story from Chuck.
But you see, the Chuck is upset that we approved the new Vector truck, but that was based on the SAM board being told that we needed to increase the collection system crew to two crews to make the member agency managers happy. So, you know, we have a chain of things here and we probably wouldn't have approved the new truck if we were staying at one crew.
Well, yeah, and I sent you the email before the meeting where you asked my advice, and I said, yeah, well, we're gonna need a truck eventually, but let's wait till the new manager comes on and we talk about the collections crew.
And I wanted to do that and didn't win that argument.
So the spot we're at now is that they've got a budget of $869,000. Last year they spent, if you go to that second page, they spent they're projecting to spend $580,000, which is with a three-man crew. I don't, you know, we started this, I want to say 10 years ago. They only had the one truck and a two-man crew or a three-man crew. And it's grown, and I just don't, you know, I don't see the need for it. Again, I have nearly identical system down south. And it's got one big Vector truck manned by two guys and a third guy to do call-outs and traffic control and pump station stuff and whatever you need. So they're staffed at 4, and remember, if they get 4 collections guys, they're also picking up the collections budget is picking up the cost of 2.5 treatment guys. So now it's a 6.5-man crew for
Yeah, they
collection
charge like
system.
half of the mechanic, I think.
It's half the mechanic and a quarter of the treatment plant operators, something like that. It's not in this budget. You have to go back 2 years to find it. So I just think that's overstaffed. I think with what we've got here and a good Vector truck, you could clean it with 2 guys and a third guy supervising, helping, and whatnot.
I would certainly be happy if the 3 agency managers are in agreement that one crew, now, do they, if it's one crew, they kind of need the higher powered Vector truck though.
Absolutely.
Which,
I've been, There's no ambiguity in our discussions there. I say they need a real truck and they need a three-man crew. I couldn't be more clear. I mean, I run one.
All right, so we're gonna have to take that back to the SAM board on, let's see, okay, real truck and three-man crew.
I mean, you can always get the three-man crew, and if it doesn't work in a year, you can add a fourth. It's tougher to take one down than it is to add, so.
Okay.
Let's just say the vote on the collections truck surprised me.
Well, it was
I'll
based.
put it mildly.
It was based on what we were told at the time, which, in hindsight, just didn't jive with, what you were saying, but, we kind of thought that was newer information.
Yeah, no, nothing's changed, so.
Okay. Now, the salmon packet is probably sitting on our doorsteps now. Those who need to get it on paper still. But we can amend the agenda up through tomorrow.
Oh, because the budget's not on it.
Oh. Okay, that's true, if the budget is on there, but.
Well, it'll be
I'm
interesting.
thinking, do we need a standalone budget item to talk about the staff development?
Well, it'll be interesting to talk to the other member agencies' managers. I'd be surprised if Alex at Half Moon Bay disagreed with me. I don't know about
All right, can you
Clemens.
make sure that's discussed tomorrow?
Yes, it will be.
What's the reason for, are they paying out a lot of overtime, or what? They're just saying that people are too overextended in terms of what's the main justification for it?
The member agencies are unhappy with the performance of the collections crew, and part of it is because I don't think they have the correct, the guys work hard, they're out there, they spend a lot of hours doing the thing. I don't think they have the proper equipment to do it. They have these two smaller Vector trucks that don't have a Vector, actually, they're just jetters. I don't know, I took a look about 3 years ago what their nozzles types were, and it was an older fashioned nozzle type thing, more of a flusher than an actual spinning, high-pressure cutter, which cuts roots. And we've had numerous instances, not just here, but up there and down in Half Moon Bay, where we've sent a crew in to TV something after they cleaned it, and there's still roots and everything all there. And that's not, you don't give them the right equipment. The equipment's cleaning it, not them, so.
Okay, I have another item for you to discuss tomorrow. The SAM staff is adamantly against getting the proper TV. And Delia insists that we need to have the side-looking TV, and the SAM staff just doesn't want to do it. But ultimately, if the agency managers say, yeah, we should have that, then the SAM board can say, we don't care what you want, we want you to have a camera that can look at the
When you say
side.
SAM staff, who's SAM staff?
Tony.
I'll talk to Tony about that then. Because we've had this discussion, and Delia and I disagree a little bit on this. If you go hire SAM to camera your TV lines, you're paying for it. Just as if you hire a private contractor, because any hours they come out here, you're paying for their crew. So it seems like it's free, let's just get the SAM guys out, but the reality is it's not, and for them to staff up and get a correct camera with a correct truck and correct training to do that, especially with a three-man crew, it doesn't pencil out.
But what I'm thinking is, they're sending the camera down there. They ought to be able to look to the sides and the laterals to see if there's a problem right there in the lateral close to the main line.
No, there's two types of, the cleaning nozzle that they're gonna get will have a forward-looking camera on it, and I don't think you can have a camera come look that way, because it's part of the cleaning system. So it's different, so if you want something that moves and turns, you can get one. We've got one in my Rancho Santa Fe district. It's a portable thing that costs $25,000, but again, I don't TV enough that I
Okay, so you're saying
can't outsource
they'd
it.
have to pull out the cleaning tool with the forward-looking camera and put the other thing in with the
Right,
side one.
it's a completely separate animal, no.
All right.
And I want them cleaning, I want them focused on cleaning, because that's what we want, so.
Don't we want them to see what they're doing once they clean? I mean, don't.
That's why they have the camera on the nozzle.
Right, so they can see.
So you
Right.
just can't, look up a lateral.
They
or
don't
something.
have that right now.
They don't have
Right.
any of it,
Right.
really.
And
I just want to clarify that.
over the last few years, and I'm not sure exactly how many years it is, 3 to 5 at least, the camera has been non-operational for a lot more of the time than it's been operational.
Well, that's the conversation I have with Delia. It sounds good in principle to let them have a camera. We've got 5 years of pain that the camera doesn't work, the camera doesn't work, the camera doesn't work. They don't get the footage that the other guys get. They don't have the microphone. It's a
When you say the other guys,
private companies, yeah. They go down and they can see the footage, and if they see
Yeah.
something bad, they turn the camera, they stop and say, root intrusion at 123 feet, you know. It's what they do for a living.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so, and they've got better equipment than Sam.
But the problem is, we're not calling them out until after we have a problem. And if Sam can go in there and see it as they're doing it.
Well, that's what they'll theoretically be able, the new machine will theoretically be able to see while they're cutting. So,
We need to get Google into the plumbing business.
Google.
send their little car down there with the camera.
And
All right.
let's ask the two new directors if they know what a pig is. When we were rebuilding the junction structure further up the Burnham Strip, I asked Tony, what is this concrete vault, and why is there an offset? And the pipe comes down here and comes through the vault, and then it moves over and continues that. And he said it's to catch the pigs. And I went, what?
The pig is a cleaning mechanism.
Those of you who are fans of the James Bond movies, you saw a pig in one of those movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he rode it through a pipeline.
I don't remember that.
Yep. So, where are we with?
So unless you've got questions on collections, we can hop to the CMP, capital maintenance program.
All right, so where we are is that Rick and I are gonna push for, we go ahead and get the real truck, but we focus on a two-man crew and see if we can.
See how it works.
Sell the existing trucks for any reasonable amount of money.
Yeah, they want to keep one, I think, because they're afraid in some sections of Half Moon Bay it'll blow toilets off of floors or something.
Did they actually say that?
Yes, I mean, they may have actually done it, I don't know. I have to imagine there's ways of regulating the pressure that goes through there, but, you know. Again, we have the same, so we have a 1925 system in Rancho Santa Fe, and old clay pipe, and blowing toilets off the edges, so.
All right, so I guess we're moving to.
I may be eating my words, so.
So we're moving to item 3, consideration of sewer authority's interest in capitalized maintenance budget. So that title sounds like they finally responded to me making a big thing about you can't call capital replacement things capital projects just because they're over a certain dollar amount. Because that was triggering the APA agreement issues.
Right, well, they call them project though, and it's paid for on a flow distribution basis, which surprised everybody. And these are just targeted repairs they're talking about. I guess this comes from the SAM board. The SAM consultants had presented a 5-year CIP budget or 7-year CIP budget in excess of $7 million. And the respective agencies flipped the lid because we can't absorb that kind of thing into a rate increase. So they've limited it to $500,000 worth of projects for this year while we prioritize future SAM projects.
So, do you have any idea, I don't recall seeing this before, do you have any idea what this little thing is here with what I consider percent number?
What's the flow percentage? What do you mean?
It says ownership distribution.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I said we were surprised, because when I looked at the first time, I expected it to say 50, 30, 20. Alex in Half Moon Bay had budgeted 50, his 50, and I said, no, you gotta look at the thing, it says ownership percentage, and then it gives you flow percentage.
Well,
It's also got the divided by 0 in the lower right-hand corner, too.
what's that? On that page.
Yeah.
So, would it make sense to you for us to tonight say we're not approving this with these ownership distribution numbers here? I mean, if they knew enough to put ownership there, then it should be the 50.5,
Well,
the
yeah.
29.5, and 20.
I guess Vivian put together this budget, and in Vivian's defense, it's the first one she's done, and like I said, she got transitioned out during it, so either you fix the percentages there, or you change the title to flow percentage.
Well, we kind of need.
If you don't want to call it, if you don't want to get into the project conversation, I'd recommend you change it to flow percentage.
We need an expert opinion on whether this type of item is paid for by ownership percentage versus flow percentage.
I'll give you my expert opinion. It's not. I think it's a repair of a pipe. If I repaired a 1 foot section, would you call that a repair? So if I repaired a 300 foot section, it's just a bigger repair, so. And I, you know, quite honestly, Leonard,
But it's the IPS. And I don't know, I just don't see it as relevant to flow. Suppose,
if you argue, but let
okay,
me,
suppose the building needed a major repair, the admin building. Give me the argument for basing the repair of the admin building on flow percentages.
well, I'm doing more from a practical standpoint. I've got the SAM board who approved this budget, approved sending it out, including the 2 members from Half Moon Bay. They've agreed to pay their fair share of this $500,000. I wouldn't bring this issue up to argue about 1.3% of $500,000.
Well, maybe I should have.
And in the past, for your edification, in the past, Half Moon Bay has not always wanted to pay for IPS issues, that long pipeline from there. They've said, we don't use it, we're not paying for it. Now we've got them paying, you know, and which I think they should, because it's maintenance. I think mum's the word.
Well, the reason that they have to pay their percent share of ITS maintenance, or operation and maintenance, is they benefit from the fact that the plant is in Half Moon Bay. So saying they don't use the IPS is not relevant, because whichever member agency the plant was in can be making that argument, and it's inherently unfair to the 2 member agencies where the plant isn't. So the appropriate way to look at it is that SAM has a point of presence within each member agency. The point of presence in Half Moon Bay is the plant. The point of presence for SAM within GSD is the Portola pump station. The point of presence for SAM in Montero Water and Sanitary District is the Montero pump station. And so each of the 3 member agencies delivers their wastewater to SAM's point of presence within their district.
And you could certainly make that argument, but you're doing that just making an argument versus they could turn to the JPA and say, it says here, if it's an operational cost, it's charged based on flow percentage and we all have to participate. If it's a project, it's done on ownership and they can choose not to pay. And that's
But
it.
Sam
So I'm
owns
saying, they're treating this as an operations cost. They could treat it as a project cost and they would say they're not gonna pay for anything, just what they did with the wet weather flow management project.
Well, more recent city council members have stated off to the side that they should have participated in that project.
But I wouldn't want to raise this issue and bring this to light for $6,000. That's just me.
Okay. So anything else on the capitalized maintenance budget? Are you okay with the way-
Yeah,
I mean, there isn't much here.
Right, we identified in our walkthrough, we identified the low-hanging fruit of what needs to be fixed in Portola and Montero pump stations and things like that. So as long as they're doing that, and they're fixing the obvious rusted doors, and that they're doing these projects which will increase the integrity of the IPS, I'm fine. And I think they are concentrating correctly on that.
You know that I spent a number of years trying to get them to repaint the front door at the Portola pump station.
It's long past paint.
That's because they ignored me for years and years and years, and the door turned to dust. So we do have a little bit of detail, but not much here. There's the air vacuum release valve repairs. And those are really critical items because just like you have a vent on your water lines in your house, a vent that goes up to the roof to prevent clanging when you turn the water on and off, these air release valves keep that system from clanging when the pumps start up and shut down. And if they're not working right, the pipe can either burst or collapse due to vacuum or pressure at the start.
Yeah, they serve two purposes. They do that, and they also serve as a bypass station. So the pipe breaks here, you can bypass the pipeline, fix it, and go.
Well, only in places where we've completed that update.
Right, supposedly they're
The old ones
combined
don't
though.
have that.
Supposedly the air release valves are also bypass stations, I thought.
Not the old ones as far as I know.
I can ask them. No, the old ones aren't.
Right.
I'm talking about the new ones, will be.
Yeah, I'm not clear on the actual mechanics of it. So are we ready to move on to item 4, our district budget?
All right.
Okay.
All right. I'm just gonna march through some of the highlights real quickly. Our sewer service charge is gonna stay at $402 per ERU, and we'll show an operating gain of $20,000, which will go to reserve to pay for future capital replacement projects. As I said before, each year SAM is somewhere between 65 and 70% of our total budget, so, you know, we can see more savings from that side than from the 30% that's under ours.
How much did we put into reserves in the current fiscal year?
We're projecting to reserves $112,000.
Okay, so this is way down.
Right. So if you turn to the first page of the actual budget, page 1 of 5, that one.
I don't know, there's a hole in my page right where it says page something of 5.
That's pretty good.
Oh, okay.
So the only thing that changed, I won't say dramatically, is I had underestimated the property tax allocation we had gotten. I kept it flat from the previous year, and it's gone up, and it looks to go up a couple of % each year based on the property tax collected.
Well, most tax collectors are in the process of canceling the reductions that people had asked for due to the real estate swamp.
Yeah, I think it's that, and also homes are turning over, obviously, and the values are going up. So they sent us, I forget who it was, a tax collector sent around something saying they expected collections to increase 2% a year. But other than that, you know, our sewer service charges are pretty steady. Our reimbursement from the assessment district is a known because we decide it. And the franchise fee is about the same each year because it's based on their overall revenue, so. Any questions on the operating revenues?
Most miscellaneous.
Miscellaneous. Anything that doesn't fall into that other category.
Well, I don't know how we would have any revenue that isn't the first 4 items.
This application.
Oh,
There you go.
right. Okay. But don't we charge $150 application fee?
Yeah, but we have $750 for variances and $250 for commercial.
But, you're showing 2,000, which is only a handful of application fees. Okay. Well, it says estimated 0 for 2013-14, that can't be right. That can't be right.
I have a running joke with boards. I always say, whenever I take it to the budget, the board hones in on the smallest item, and we start talking about,
Well, but you see,
I may be off by $1,000.
That's
I might be
actually just
500.
a red number.
I maybe didn't do it.
So,
I'll check that number.
You didn't put on 13-14. I'm confused.
Oh, yeah, the top of the heading for.
Oh, Delia pointed that out to me.
So all these headings that say 13-14 are
Yeah.
really 14-15?
Yeah, that's it, was part of, it's in Excel, and it's part of the header, and you don't see it, so I didn't catch it.
All right.
So going to the next page.
So, so the annual service charge is showing, essentially trivial change. I guess that would be from a handful of new connections.
It'd be a handful of new connections or our commercial usage fluctuates, so. So going to the next page, the operations expenditures, we've got Sam, as we talked about before last year, we paid out $884,000. This year it's projected to be $988,000. That's because our percentage increased as flowed to Sam supposedly, and their budget's also a little bit higher, so. That's kind of where it hits you, to show you how much affects Sam, you know. That's a $100,000 increase in costs. You know, my entire administrative budget's 480 or whatever it is, so, I mean, their costs have a much bigger impact than anything we can do to get some efficiencies.
So if they go out and find out that the facility here is leaking, that's gonna be too late for this budget, what recourse do we have?
Think about how much recourse we had the last time we found the problem,
Yeah.
which was zero.
Well, if they find out in the next month, they have recourse because they can amend the budget. And they really could amend the budget even the month after that.
No, because it takes 5 votes, and Captain Bay will never, ever, ever approve any budget change that increases their costs. They've made that crystal clear. No matter how reasonable it is, they won't do it. So
Then I'd say then let's not worry about it
So
because you
you-
can't change it.
But what you need to do is you need to put enough heat on them to get this done within the next week or two.
I will. So the SAM collections budget similarly goes up from 229 to 263. So there's another $44,000 in increase. And just, you know, I went back and looked at this because collections is near and dear to my heart. 10 years ago, their collections budget was $95,000, our share.
I don't understand something. If they have 5.5 FTE, and our system cleaning is a little over 30%, I forget, 35%?
Yeah, it's always somewhere near 30, yeah.
It's more than our flow percentage, because I guess you're asking for a little more cleaning than some of the other agencies are. But 30% of 5.5 FTE is 263,000 for 2 FTE. What am I missing?
Well, there's other costs in the collections budget, it's not all payroll.
Yeah. Payroll's less than half of that number, I would figure.
It's 30% of 5.85.
I mean,
I
these
mean,
numbers just
the
look
whole
really
collections
bad.
thing doesn't make any sense to me, but I've told you that year after year. I don't know why the treatment plant operator is spending a quarter of his time in the field. I don't know why that is.
Because they borrow them to fill people who are out, but
It's a lot of outs.
yeah, I'm not gonna claim to be able to understand. their
Well, yeah,
explanation.
and I'd have made a bigger stink about this in past years, but like I said, historically, our percentage of hours and collections has been around 30, which is the same as our flow. And, you know, if it was 40%, I'd be getting the treatment guys off that collections budget.
So at this point, are you satisfied with the level of cleaning that this district is getting?
Not the quality, but they're doing a lot of feet. I just don't think they have the equipment to do it right. Like I said, it's not their fault. They're out there putting in the hours. All right, and you can see every year those lateral repairs fluctuate. This year we've had an estimated $68,000 for Jim and David, the lateral from the house to the street. It's generally what our district policy is. If you have a clean out at the property line, which is generally halfway there, we'll maintain or fix any lateral within the street. If it's from
Up-
here
up
to
to
the
the
house, up to the cleanout. From the cleanout to the house, it's the property owner's issue. Now, that being said, that's just the district's policy. We could make the whole lateral the property owner's issue, and they would have to pay for the whole repair. And some years, you know, $68,000 is a significant, you know, chunk of change. So, in past years, the board has agreed to keep that policy in place, but I just want to make you aware of it.
Can you find out what the other two member agencies' policies are? And if both of them are opposite from ours, then I'd like us to consider changing ours.
Well, remember, the city is constrained because they have to maintain it in the city street. So, but I'll find out what Montera's
They
is.
don't, they don't take it, so.
They don't? We looked that up in law, so they had to.
She's saying Montero, right?
Yeah, my card is not.
Yeah.
Montera doesn't?
No.
Oh.
The reason that I want this board to reconsider that policy is, trying to figure out how to say this without having some people storm the next meeting. Let's say that I don't think that some of the work has been done to proper standard, and that is causing our increased costs. I mean, if you drive down, what's the street in front of Cafe Plastique, is that Sevilla? Yeah, if you drive down that street, it's like driving across railroad ties. The street is so bad, and it's because it's because of two things. One, the county refuses to maintain the street, because it's too low on their PCI index, so they don't maintain it at all. But the other reason it's that bad is because of quite a number of water and sewer line lateral cuts that were very badly done. And I don't think this district should incur general costs when it's the contractor's fault. So, we need to pass that off on the property owners. Heck, the city of Half Moon Bay has passed off sidewalk maintenance, which is in the public right of way, onto the property owners. Why do they do it? Because they can.
Well, that's your board's decision.
Well, let's agendize that for some
Alright.
future agenda and discuss whether we want to change it.
All right.
Now, where do you have on here the big unknowns? Okay, ERAF. So you're putting in the same wild ass guess there as a placeholder.
Yes. Which actually has been relatively steady at $200,000 or $250,000 a year, I think.
And you filled in, now this gets really tricky in terms of time warp. You have FY 2013-14 a 0 for the same refund from prior year allocation.
That was a spectacular miscalculation.
No, it is gonna be 0.
I know, but I budgeted
Oh.
401.
Oh, right, okay.
Usually I'm pretty close. So I don't think, I think it's gonna be 0 and probably 0 going forward, so.
So should we be impressed by line items 1 and 2 on the operations budget, where the over-under budget number is 0?
Where's that?
On the, I have to figure out
Uh-oh.
what page it is, it's the whole of the page, that's on page 2. Yeah, I'm just amused to see the 0
Oh, right.
for over-under.
So does anyone have any questions on the page 3 of 5, the expenses? A couple places we were high was the two guys sitting over here, legal, and myself, under professional services. Much of that is driven by tasks that the board gives us, and certainly my time is CSD related, so that should go back down. And then everything else is pretty static. And then moving on to page 4 or 5, we get a pathetic interest on reserves. Connection fees are always an estimation, and the reason these are under non-operating revenues is because I don't have a good idea of how much we'll collect, and these generally go straight to the reserves if we do collect in excess. So, we've been pretty good with getting that ERAF fund each year. And the assessment district obviously pays us back what we tell them to each year. And I think that's gonna go up because we're doing a bunch of research on that to try and time it. So when the assessment district ends in 2022, we'll have all our money back. And Delia's done a bunch of work calculating that number.
Okay, and how many people in this room will be here in 2022?
Well, I'll still be working. Far past 2022, sadly enough.
I was gonna mention something and now I forgot what it was.
And then moving down to 5 out of 5, budgeting $340,000 for our sewer main replacement CIP. If you'll remember from last meeting, we combined years 2 and 3 to get some economies of scale, and we're getting good prices at this time, so we're trying to keep that going. So, and that's really our big project. We've got to update our sewer system management plan, which is a plan we did 6 years ago through SAM, and now we're separating out each agency, so we're going to have to outsource that to somebody to separate it out from SAM and recertify it. It's required by the State Water Resources Control Board, and it's a big document. It's a comprehensive document showing your enabling legislation, your district ordinance code, anything you can think of related to the district. They require you to compile this as a sewer system management plan. It includes hydraulic analysis of your sewer system if necessary. It's a lot of stuff. So.
What about a sewer system evaluation survey? What would be the reality of, I've heard that.
What does that mean?
Just, I've heard, and I'm not too familiar, but I've heard, people come to me and talk about it in terms of something that should be done with the coordination of all agencies.
I don't even know what it is though, that's what I'm asking, what is it?
And if, it kind of getting ahead of all the deferred maintenance issues when, things are, we're kind of reacting to things as they go, kind of taking a proactive approach and mapping all that out so that, we have a
That's
better
actually,
plan of attack.
that we've actually done that. That's that 5-year CIP. So kind of our first step was we developed the district. We used to have a CAD map, which is flat. Now we have a district geographic information system, which is the map, but it's also populated with a database of information showing the age of your pipe and the condition assessment. And as part of that, we also do, you'll see somewhere up here, there's $30,000 this year for CCTVing of the mains.
Mhm.
So you go into the spots you know have problems, and you TV them to see exactly what I was talking about before, 123 feet, there's a void in the pipe. So that's the proactive stuff, because we don't really do much reactive stuff, because sewers generally, you've done enough if you do your CCTVing. We TV'd the system entirely 10 years ago maybe, and we've been doing pieces since. And part of that sewer system management plan requires you to do some CCTVing. So that's the proactive part, is getting the cameras down there, assessing the line condition, and then repairing them as necessary. And that's why we've targeted the 1920s pipe, because we've got 10,000 feet of that, and that's 100 years old. So, it's about time it gets replaced. And next, we're going to move on to a pipe called transite, which is put in the 60s, and it's very fragile with age, so we're going to do a condition assessment of that stuff. And that's how you manage it. What's nice about our GIS system is I click a button, and it says, highlight all 1920s pipes. And there it is, and now you know where you've got to go TV, and just that kind of stuff. So we've got that kind of proactive thing going.
I remember what I was gonna mention, the two new directors may not be aware of this. A lot of other agencies look at the capital projects they're gonna have to do each year, and they figure out how to put the right amount of money in its budget. This district has, as far as I know, never done it that way. We keep the rates pretty stable, and we typically collect more than we need for operations, and the excess goes into reserves, and then all of our capital projects are paid for out of reserves. So basically, the reserves is a savings account that we withdraw from fund the reserves.
Right, and just for the record, I actually maintain a 5-year budget. I haven't presented it here because we don't have Sam's capital budget for 5 years, so ours is small. So when I project out 5 years, I keep an eye on our reserve level to make sure our rates are correct, because that's how you set your rates. But once Sam gets their 5-year budget done, I'll flow it into ours, and your board will see it, and you can see where we are. So it's just useless doing it now, because until Sam produces it, the last one was $7 million. It's got a bigger impact than $200,000 from us. So.
Well, I think you'll see improvements from Sam in short order with the new guy. I have forgotten what he said he'd come here tonight.
All right.
So we're also not approving this until next month?
We're not approving this till next month, right? So has anyone got any further questions? All right.
Do you have any comments at this time about reevaluating the connection charge, which Montero does, I think, every year or?
No, that's on my
Or
to-do
frequently.
list by next month, actually.
Because we haven't done it since the new plant expansion capacity came online in 99 or 2000.
Yeah, no, that's on my to-do list. John Rayner has submitted a draft to me.
Okay, and I would like the two of you to consider Montero's methodology, which is based on the construction something or other cost index, rather than the way Howard Hoffman did it, which is based on a depreciated valuation of the existing facilities. I think he was doing it backwards, and Montero's approach makes more sense to me.
I'll have to look at, wait, John's already done it, so I'll have to look at his methodology. I looked at it 3 months ago.
If you could let us know what
All right.
methodology, I would appreciate that. All right, so we're at item 5. Consideration of district's proposed reorganization of the community services district with the addition of park and recreation power.
I've got nothing further.
I have one thing that I should have said when Lenny was here. In conversations with her, I ended up computing what the daily cost increase would be if we shift 50,000 from subsidizing sewer service charges over to running Parks and Rec. And it's about 4.5 cents a day.
Oh.
So literally pennies. It's an amusing number. So we're calling it nickel a day because that's easier to
Right.
get your head around. Nickel a day. Do people want to pay a nickel a day to have a local Parks and Rec? I certainly hope so. Any directors have anything on that item?
I just think it was, thanks for all the work people did to get the public meeting notices out, the posters, a sound system. I think the meeting went off better.
Right.
In general, it was more of a real discussion, answering questions rather than people yelling and stuff like that. I think it came off pretty well.
Good, thanks.
Maybe one of the things I should point out, since probably not a lot of people have looked at it, the independent committee has a website called GranadaParks.org, and go to the endorsements page. The endorsement is really impressive. There's at least 3 county supervisors, most of the Mid-Coast Council, a number of former Mid-Coast Council members, I think most of this board, and a number of previous board members to this district, at least a couple of Montero board members, and various other people, and close to half a dozen organizations.
Pretty big.
So it's a really impressive endorsement list that they put together. All right, so move on to item 6, our favorite item. Right?
with getting the new general manager who just walked in the door. So why don't you introduce him first, take a second.
All right,
Folks
so-
up in Montero ran quite a bit long with questions on some of the budget items, so I apologize.
I'm shocked.
Fast as I could, so.
That's actually par for the course there. That's why we like them to approve the budget first, because then we just can kind of, hang on their coattails, and they've done all the heavy lifting in questioning the budget.
Um, I don't believe I've had an opportunity to meet you all yet. My name's Rob Hopkins, and,
Can you come to the microphone? Make
sure,
you pick up on
yeah, I just
camera?
wanted to take an opportunity to introduce myself and to say thank you to the SAM board members here for putting their faith in hiring me for the opportunity to serve SAM in the 3 communities. I think it's going to be an excellent opportunity to really make some great steps forward, so look forward to it.
And I'll see you tomorrow at 10.
Absolutely, look forward to it. And, look at, I think the managers' meetings in the past were pretty productive, and I look forward to trying to continue that,
Okay, good.
and hopefully on a regular and ongoing basis. So the communication opportunities that are afforded by that kind of thing are going to be tremendous towards getting everything moving forward.
Yeah, they've been good for the past year. We went off the tracks a little last one. It was a 5-hour. Yeah.
5
I don't know how
hours.
I allowed that. So we're not gonna have that, but, yeah. Yeah, but I look forward to it.
So at the last board meeting, when the outgoing interim general manager was sitting next to the new general manager, I made the comment, it's just like having 2 popes, and nobody reacted to that comment.
Oh, boy.
And they're still not reacting.
Rob's gotta be polite. I'm long past that stage.
Well, I wanted everybody to meet Rob. Now, Matthew, our board president, is staying home sick, which is good because he's staying home. But at some point you'll need him because he's the designated alternate.
Well, towards that end, if any of you have questions or anything comes to mind, please feel free to drop me a line or email or give me a call. I'd be more than happy to discuss any concerns with you or just kind of updates on my history, philosophy, things like that too. So door's always open, and I look forward to working with everybody here. So that's, for me, it's going to be a bit new. This is the first time I've been in a JPA where I'm basically reaching out to 3 other organizations to do things like budget negotiations and things like that. Previously, I ran a community services district down in Big Bear, California, down in Southern California. So I'm on the other side of the bench this time. So bear with me while I can navigate my way through things like the budget process and some of these things, which are is more intricate on the back and forth than I'm typically used to. So if I've sown any confusion with budget terminology and things like that, I apologize. It's for me, my terms of art have been historically a little different, but we'll get past that. So.
And I would like to think that we're open to suggested changes in the way it's presented. There's potentially significant unhappiness among the directors, among some directors, not necessarily all, on certain ways the budget is laid out or presented. So, if you think you can improve it, I would certainly suggest proposing it to the SAM board and see where it goes.
Excellent. I look forward to the opportunities. I think there's some things in there that make it more user-friendly, if not anything else. Easier to navigate through and understand. So.
Yeah, you should look at our budget. It's like, was that
Get much simpler.
was that
I'm actually
paper or two?
I'm actually out of San Diego.
Oh, okay.
So, you know Dudek? You heard of engineering firm Dudek?
Yeah.
I work for them, so I fly up here. I manage 3 CSDs down there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so.
You need to keep it as simple as possible.
Right.
My goodness.
Well, I guess I didn't realize all 3 of them were CSDs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for all these people out there saying, what does a sewer district having to do with Parks and Rec. Well, there's 3 sewer districts that are actually community services districts, all 3 of them doing something else besides sewer.
When I was down at Big Bear, generally the history of a CSD is these responsibilities, and the community comes to you over time and says, why don't you take on this, or why don't we cooperatively organize this operation or the other. The CSD that I worked for did recycling, trash collection, parks and rec, fire suppression, ambulance services. And those things all came along in water and sewer also. And those all came along at different points in time, so there's quite an extended history. You know, some of it formed in '64, and then '68, and '72, and the ambulances came along because the hospital couldn't afford to, you know, run the operation, things like that. So it's a growing process. But Parks and Rec is a real big one with my past experience as far as where people want to get on board and do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I did ask Rob way back, I guess, at one of the interviews, maybe, or I don't know, maybe when I talked to you when we started, I didn't know there was a Big Bear City, because the name of the community services district is the Big Bear City Community Services District. He said, there isn't. I said, okay, well then why is it the Big Bear City Community Services District if there's no Big Bear City?
Yeah.
And I don't remember the answer.
Well, it's they turned themselves a city, but they're just a services district. It's kind of and then Big Bear Lake actually is incorporated as a city. And there's a dividing line right down the middle of the lake. And the Big Bear City lives on one half, and Big Bear Lake lives on the other. But, yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge at first.
Is that like Tahoe and State Line?
Well, I guess you could think of it that way. It really is 2 distinct communities. That you've got Big Bear Lake is more up on the north end of the lake, the city of Big Bear, and then Big Bear City itself is more down towards the south.
Well, we're glad you're here.
So I want to say thanks again for the excellent opportunity. I really look forward to it.
Yeah, you'll have fun with the JPA.
Yeah.
It's an interesting beast.
Absolutely. I think in the end, I look at everything as a learning opportunity,
Yeah.
so it'll be good for me too. Tomorrow at 10?
Tomorrow at 10. See you there.
Thanks for coming over here.
Absolutely, thank you. And like I said, the door's always open, so if you're in the area and just want to pop in, I spend a lot of time in the office pretty much, so please feel free to come by and pick my brain a little bit if you like.
I used to have the same policy.
That change over time? Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Now he's not sure what his office looks like. All right, so back to item something or other, 6.
Okay, well, I conveniently had a prop for the first item walking in, so that's we did the budgets, which you've all seen right now. I won't go into those any further. We've done a couple administrative type things, which is formalizing personnel policy handbooks. And,
I thought we punted that.
well, that's what we're doing. I didn't say we didn't.
Yeah, come to think of it, now I have to think about it. Didn't we decide to put that off until a year from now after the next round of union negotiations?
It's going to be after the union, so it's been put off. Then we're working on the SAM Code of Conduct, which Leonard and Kowalczyk are stalling on.
I'll have to call him. Hey, he's the one that wanted it, he never called me.
Yes, moving on. The hot item, of course, every time is this allocation methodology. We've been the victim of, as we said, hundreds of thousands of dollars we've lost with no recompense after they fix the meters. The reason I've been hammering to just split on the 50-30-20 rule is that that's pretty close to the historical average. We spend hours and hours and hours debating this. We spend hours and thousands of dollars buying meters. We have consultants coming in. We argue every single meeting, every single budget. I said, why don't we just blow that whole thing off? Just stop fighting and split it 50-30-20, and let's just move forward.
Within a variance, where if it breaks the threshold and.
Well, if it goes crazy,
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. I think within a normal.
It's,
range it's gonna be.
it's just sitting at the meeting, arguing with everybody over obvious variances that are unexplainable. And then we find out months later, it's the stupid meters were broken, and we get no money back, and now it's starting again, and our things aren't exactly measured. If they don't go along with this, then I'm gonna ask to put in about 10 new meters over the entire new system. Isolate El Granada specifically, so instead of being a subtraction from somebody else's number, we're gonna be metering El Granada flows. And I'm hoping that people will just give up and go along with this,
It
because
makes all the sense in the world, and
it's just,
it's nice that we have the 50-30-20 near flow split right now, which makes it easy to translate to dollars. If it was,
But wouldn't it?
60-20-20, it'd be tougher.
Wouldn't it make more sense, though, for, essentially, look at the way the water district charges their customers. They charge a base rate and then a commodity charge. And for the really low water users like me, the base rate is twice my commodity charge. In other words, my commodity charge is a minor part of my bill. And so you previously said that the fixed costs are the bulk of the budget. So if we look at the fixed costs and go with Rick's method on the fixed costs, and then, the remaining really small part that is variable based on flow, then we charge that way. I think that would help a lot.
I thought about that on the way up, Leonard, after I read this, and I'd rather keep it simple, because if you're gonna take 10% of the cost and split them up on flow, you'll still have some of the same arguments, and it's not gonna be enough money one way or the other to just try and keep it simple. I think we start with 50-30-20, and if you get resistance, maybe you backpedal to that model.
It would actually have to be 50.5, 29.5, 20.
But at this point in time, I'd agree to 50-30-20.
and again, it's not only that, but it's, we get into this budgeting thing. If your budgets are swinging 5 and 10%
Right,
every year,
like us.
it's meaningless. I mean, why not have a budget and you can look forward to, this is what our cost is going to be. Based on this global number, we have more people in the area. It's just so much simpler, and I'm just really tired of the argument, so that's why.
It
Well,
may require some legal research, because I was told very recently, I'm trying to remember who, it may have come from Mueller, that the Regional Water Quality Board is taking a really dim view on unmetered charging.
Yeah, I've heard that, and seen it go the other way. They just had a water case which removed tiered rates because it's unconstitutional, even though it's serving supposedly a noble purpose of trying to reduce water use.
Can you send me a reference to that?
Yeah. And I've heard that from the
Really
regional
appreciate
boards.
it.
I laughed when I read that, because it said have GSD called the regional board, and I'm thinking, for what? Am I gonna call a bunch of engineers who've never run an operation and ask them for advice? But now I know the background.
Yeah, but I'd like to get that reference.
And then the final thing we did is we approved the CalPERS salary schedule for the unrepresented employees, which is a requirement. And then the rest was just reports after that. And it was my birthday, and nobody could bake me a cake.
Well, happy belated birthday.
Your birthday is today or Sam's birthday?
April 28th.
Oh, it's Sam's birthday. Oh, got chocolate chips to eat. Any other questions from the directors regarding anything Sam related? I'll call everybody's attention to the March 2014 SSO page. All zeros and full matrix.
I was just gonna say, back to what we kind of talked about in terms of, with the adding of employees and everything, I think now, in light of even, a new position and kind of all that, it is critical that we do our job to make sure they go in the right direction, right, in terms of reducing expenses and being more fiscally responsible versus, I'm sure there is pressure with people and there's someone new coming in, people saying, hey, we need this, we need extra help here, and, what we can do is to lean on them, make sure it goes,
Right, and that's
the
what I've
opposite
mentioned
way
before.
instead of-
You need to instill a culture of cost cutting
Yeah.
and cost savings. So this is just a budget, it's just a bunch of
Yeah.
numbers.
Well,
The guy who comes in there has to instill this sense,
Yeah,
it's what I always joke about, you need to get a jerk in there for a year. Clean it out and then move on. So I agree.
Yeah, and we have a new manager that I made it really clear to him that we need to be a lot more cautious in spending public money than the previous general manager was. And as far as I'm concerned, the previous general manager literally had a seriously bad attitude about spending public money. So I am looking forward to being over that. So, anything else on Sam? Okay, I have one question. We don't need to discuss it, so I'll hold it off at the consent agenda. But there's this one lateral here that's twice as much as Delia's missing.
Yeah, there's a lateral repair that was $12,000.
Yeah, that's double what our lateral repairs usually cost. So
Yeah,
why is that?
it was a tricky one around a water main. What actually happened is when they put the water main, I don't know if it was water main or water service, it must be a main. When they put the water main in, that's what broke the sewer pipe. So Delia is actually in the process now of filling out a claim form to CCWD to get reimbursed for that.
Right.
And she came by, signed the check, and she said she was intense and she was heading to CCWD.
Right. When
But
she
I'm
first,
glad I wasn't there.
when she first handed it to me, I said, wait a minute, they broke our main and they're submitting a claim to us to fix it. No, it's the reverse.
Can you keep us informed on how
All right.
it is? So, anything to be held for discussion on consent, or is there a motion? It would be item 7, regular meeting minutes for April 17th, item 8, special meeting minutes for May 1st, that was the town hall, item 9, May 2014 warrants for $155,131.12, item 10, April 2014 financial statements, item 11, approval of assessment district distribution number 10-13/14 for $6,767.91.
I so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, no discussion on consent, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. Item 12, committee reports.
Just one quick one. We had our quarterly chapter meeting of the San Mateo County chapter of the California Special District Association.
I forgot to put on my calendar and I missed it.
Darn, I'll call you next time.
Okay.
We had Robert Bernardo of our local harbor district give a talk about the harbor district and the two offices and how they were going to combine or intending to combine into this building. Everybody had a lot of discussion on that. So it was a good meeting. I finally convinced them that I didn't want to be president for a 4th year. And Catherine volunteered. So Catherine from Montera is the new chapter president.
Is the VP still the GM of whatever?
Yes, and Bridget is the VP and Iris is the secretary, or treasurer.
Rick, which meeting was this?
The San Mateo County chapter of the Special Districts Association.
California Special Districts Association. We meet once a quarter over in Redwood City. Sam was the last presentation, last quarter. If you want to come up for any of those, I'll certainly know how to get you an invitation.
So it was kind of interesting to have the interim general manager doing the Sam presentation. But
No report at this time.
There was something I was gonna report on, and now I don't remember what it was. Is everybody aware of what happened with, this, essentially illegal, skate park in Moss Beach? The kids in the community there built, an apparently fairly elaborate, skate park on land owned by like the teachers union or something. And it's apparently been there for many, many years, and, I think due to some small number of complaints, the guy, the property manager for the union became aware of it and went in and had it demolished and fenced off. And so this is just another, data point for why public rec facilities need to be owned by a government agency. So, any other committee reports, meeting reports? All right, moving on, information calendar, item 13, attorney's report.
No report.
Item 14, treasurer's report.
No report at this time.
Item 15, general manager's report.
Nothing further.
Item 16, administrator's report. Administrator's MIA again. Okay, item 17, engineer's report. There's nothing in the packet for engineer's report. You have any comments on the engineer might report?
The engineer's in the process of completing the design for the CIP for the coming year.
Okay, what's your cost projection on the whole CIP?
I don't have it yet. He hasn't gotten to that point. As part of his report, he'll give us a cost estimate.
And we are at the end of the agenda, so we are adjourned.
We were close, Leonard.
No, wait a minute,